Alright, I guess it's time for me to do a top 10 list of the best decks that I think are not properly represented in competitive play based on how good these decks actually are. In my opinion, these are decks that can compete even against so-called Tier 1 decks, yet for some reason they do not see a lot of competitive play. Most of the reasons are probably misconceptions about their competitiveness because somewhere down the line people came to the general conclusion that the deck was no longer competitive, thus people stopped playing it, which is unfortunate because I think a number of these decks obviously have been mischaracterized. Note that this list comes from my experience and obviously is not applicable to all people in all areas. So, with that, let's get started. Number 10, Constellars. I really never understood why Constellars stopped seeing play. I guess the most logical reason is that they simply got overshadowed by their stepbrother of sorts, Satellar Knights. Also, it is understandable that some may avoid the deck due to the belief that it's too reliant on a single monster. While true, the helmeting up, so to speak, of a single monster, such a strategy does not really lead people to run away from a deck like Heroes. So the simple fact is that while Pallades is not Darklaw, it is still a very powerful card that can really significantly control the tempo of your opponent's plays. Also, the properly constructed Constellar deck can typically set up itself where getting a first turn Pallades is commonplace, as well as getting the resources to make a second or a third no more than 2 turns later, or even the next turn. As light monsters, Constellars can also be backed up by Honest, producing high damage potential and the ability to get over pretty much any monster in the game that can be destroyed as a result of battle. So this deck has a powerful monster that can control the tempo of opponents' plays, significant speed for summoning this monster, and Honest. Why is this deck not seeing play again? Number 9, X-Sabers. A long time ago, X-Sabers were competitive. Now people kind of are clamoring for more support, including the release of Saber Reflect in the TCG. Why does this deck need more support again? X-Sabers have high-quality spell and trap support that are consistent and produce numerous pluses or tempo breaks in Gotham's Emergency Call, Saber Slash, and Saber Hole. They have consistent swarming capacity with its own Battle Searcher, its own archetype-specific Goblinberg and Wolfbark, a hand-destroying tuner, and a slightly better version of Cyber Dragon. Their synchros can destroy the opponent's hand and back row fairly consistently. Finally, they have a battle destruction loop that almost completely neutralizes an opponent's OTK ability. The one flaw of the deck is that there is kind of too much type variety, which makes running generic searchers a little difficult, but the deck is still reasonably fast on its own due to its own personal version of Skarm before Skarm and battle searchers. Why isn't X-Saber seeing more play? Seems to have all the tools to be successful. Number 8, Heraldics. Heraldics is one of the fastest decks in the game, with number 18, Lion, Aberconway. Pluses are just commonplace. You can put things on the field and you can actually add to your hand rather than subtract from it. Unicorn at worst provides a free 2200 attack point monster in numerous resummons number 18 whenever you want it during your turn. And at best, if you're running a rank up version, which really you should be if you're running Heraldics, a free 4000 attack point monster. Basilisk is easily searched for and offers a battle out to pretty much anything that can be destroyed by a card effect. It has one of the best spell cards in the game that makes summoning multiple XZs per turn even easier and relatively commonplace. If interested, the Clownblade engine can easily be splashed into this deck, making it even more XZ consistent. The only real drawback to this deck is that if number 18 does not get its effect when removed from the field, i.e. it's banished or returned to the deck or killed by something like Armades, then the deck does lose a significant level of its speed. However, because number 18 is a psychic, and because Unicorn makes putting number 18 on the field so reliable, You can just run some mind over matters to snuff out the opponent's ability to try to eliminate number 18 without getting it going to the graveyard and getting its effect. I think Heraldics are kind of one of those decks that kind of got mini killed in a sense by Clownblade, because everyone just said, "Oh, Clownblade, this is the new sexy thing. Let's jump on this." And Heraldics are like, "Wait a second. We're better than Clownblade, and we can still use the Clownblade engine." Heraldics really should be that top XZ deck, toolbox rank 4 with only needing 2 monsters, and heck, it's so fast and so reliable. You can throw in some XZ monsters that need 3 or more. For numbers 7, 6, and 5, these decks I feel are so close together that you can kind of put them in any real order, but I guess when it comes down to just that word association thing, where think of the first thing that comes to your mind, this was the order I conducted when I first, just without even thinking about it really, just which of these 3 decks are better, blah, so on and so forth. So, number 7, Evoltile, Evolsaur. This deck never really kind of got over that hump of just some random rogue deck that at times does well, at times doesn't, and that never really made sense. It produces consistent access to one of the best XZ monsters in the game in Solda, consistent access to Lagia and Dolka at speeds rivaling Dino Rabbit. Evo Singularity is one of the best archetype-specific trap cards in the game. Heck, it might be the best archetype-specific trap card in the game, making a Solda, Lagia, or Dolka jokingly easy to summon. Due to the bonuses gained from tributing multiple Evoltile monsters, there are significant advantage combinations to be had with running Ruthless Denial and or Mini Guts. Overall, this deck has great speed, great field control, and nasty OTK potential if electing to run Mini Guts. So, what happened? I don't really understand why in some contexts you could argue the king of stun decks suddenly just doesn't see play anymore. For number 6, Galaxy. As I said in my introduction when I built a Galaxy deck in my deck building session, sometimes a deck gets labeled as principally fun or non-competitive unjustly. This labeling typically occurs due to poor play or poor deck design, which restricts the ability to tap into the general strengths of the deck. In my opinion, the Galaxy deck has fallen into that mischaracterization trap. Galaxy decks produce high-frequency, high-consistent rank 8 and rank 5 plays, which means various Galaxy Eye Dragons, including Tachyon Dragon and Prime Photon, along with Felgrand, and hey, if your deck can make Felgrand, your deck is almost inherently competitive, in addition to Pallades and Dunradal. It has its own archetype-specific Solemn Judgment on steroids in Tachyon Transmigration. The only problem this deck really has is that even the best builds can have those bad draws occasionally from time to time, but most decks have bad draws. It's just a issue when you play the game. Sometimes you're just not going to get that good draw. And the thing with Galaxy is, even if you get an okay draw, you can turn it into a pretty nice field if you designed your deck right. So, where are the Galaxy decks? Who knows? Alright, time for number 5, and probably what a number of viewers will label as the most controversial choice on this list, but if you have not played this deck, then you should probably reserve judgment until you do. What's number 5? Ojamas. Why Ojamas? Let's see. Access to one of the best fusion monsters in the game, First of the Dragons? Check. Access to high attack anti-destruction lock in number 64, Ronin Raccoon? Check. Access to one of the best searchers in the game in Ojama Blue? Check. Fast with high-quality deck thinning and searching? Check. Consistent and quality OTK potential? Check. Hardcore, serious, take-no-prisoner card art? Oh, that's why nobody plays this deck, right? The card art isn't cool. The ego just doesn't let people it doesn't allow them to play Ojamas. I get it now. That must be it. Maybe we need to put re-release the Ojamas in like biker jackets or something. I don't know. No, in all seriousness, an Ojama deck is definitely competitive, and there really is no reason why it shouldn't see play more often outside of just someone's personal preference that just doesn't appeal to them for whatever reason. Their favorite deck is deck X. But for anyone who's looking for an interesting deck to play, that when run intelligently and constructed properly, will win consistently, Ojama's is a good deck to try. Number 4, Batteryman. Batteryman is another deck that just kind of dropped off the face of the map for no good reason. It's one of the fastest OTK decks in the game that can commonly go from 0 cards on the field to 4 monsters without resorting to any pendulum shenanigans. Is incredibly consistent when designed properly with versatile monster removal options via destruction, bounce. You can tribute them through using Monarch Storm 4th. It can also produce numerous pluses with its spell and trap support, in addition to having Microcell. Incidentally, Microcell is probably one of the best, if not the best, single-shot solo advantage producers in the game. The only real reason I can think of why this deck stopped seeing play was the rise of Necroz due to Valkyris, because of Valkyris' ability to kind of act as a threatening roar of sorts. You attack, I dump Valkyris, your battle phase ends. However, even if that were the reason, I don't really think the deck fell off because of that reason, because I don't think people thought that intently about it. Batterymen are still high enough quality that they can produce multiple bites of the OTK apple, not just one, so you can actually hammer through Necroz fairly effectively unless things just go horribly wrong with your luck. Batterymen, always been a high quality deck. Not sure really what happened. Number 3, U.A.s. The U.A.s are one of those decks that have ebbed and flowed in their popularity, where upon their release and every time they got new support, the popularity perked up, only to fall soon after. The lack of popularity for U.A.s has always surprised me, for they're one of the most versatile decks in the game, with frequent rapid access to monster negation when battling through Slugger, monster effect negation through Blockbacker, multiple card destruction through Dunker, destruction protection through Goalkeeper, and one of the most powerful cards in the game in Perfect Ace that can completely thwart your opponent's strategy. The deck is fast and consistent through access to multiple searchers, both spell and monster based. It can OTK with almost no setup through Jersey. The only real reason I can think of why this deck doesn't see play, a lot of play, where it almost just becomes quasi-tier 1 just through volume, is this idea that people think the deck is stadium critical. In that, if you don't get UA Stadium early in the duel, then your chances of winning basically don't exist, and you might as well just scoop. This reasoning is incredibly flawed, for UAs are fast and consistent enough that Stadium isn't critical for victory. It's just incredibly helpful, that enhances your victory probability significantly, but you don't need it to win. Number 2, Gagaga. The lack of Gagaga play is rather perplexing because it is the king of XZ decks. For all the love that Clownblade gets, or the praise that I gave Heraldics earlier, both do not measure up to the XZ capacity of Gagagas. Incidentally, on a side note, I think Clownblade really only took off because of the ability of Shockmaster. If Shockmaster was not available, then Clownblade really wouldn't see the insane play it sees in the OCG. That's just my opinion, but I think it would be somewhat successful because rank 4 toolboxes are still pretty much always going to be good, but without Shockmaster, the dominance of Clownblade would just fall like a stone out of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Anyways, back to the point. While Blades and Heraldics are rank 4 Swarm XZ decks, Gagaga is basically an almost whatever I want XZ deck, with access to rank 2 through rank 10, including spellcaster-specific XZs. The effectiveness of Gagaga to produce the right monster for the right time is rather remarkable. Some may be a little cautious of Gagaga because it is dependent on Magician for its versatility, but when you think about it, almost every deck in the game is dependent on one or two monsters as critically important for the deck. Necros has Unicorn and Trishula, Clefort has Scout, Cosmos has Farm Girl, BAs have Dante, Stellar Knights have Altilier, so the concern about the importance of Magician should rather be inconsequential. This reality is especially correct because of the high-quality spell and trap supports this archetype has, with one of the best deck searchers in the game, significant graveyard recursion, and one of the best draw cards in the game. Speed and Magician consistency is rarely an issue for Gagagas. Through its extra deck versatility, this deck can stun, OTK, or just generally annoy the heck out of an opponent. Note that all of these positives are even without the presence of Gagaga Head, which is only available in the OCG right now, and it's a rather nasty support card and will instantly make this deck even better if it ever does come to the TCG. Overall, Gagaga should see more play because it's an interesting and fun deck that can win against any other deck. And finally, number 1. It's really no-brainer for me. It's Chronomaly. Why doesn't this deck see play? It can make pretty much any generic rank 3 through 5 consistently, including both Pallades and Gorgonic Guardian, two of the best XZ monsters in the game. If you don't know what Gorgonic Guardian does, it's a 1600 attack, quick play breakthrough skill that lowers the target's attack to 0. That can also nuke any monster with 0 attack during your turn free of charge. Basically, it's one of the best stun cards in the game, if not the best stun card in the game. That's not ridiculous like Cyber Dragon Infinity. Therefore, this deck can be one of the best stun decks in the game due to access to these cards. The deck can also OTK at the drop of a hat, regardless of what type of monsters your opponent has on the field, as long as those monsters can take battle damage. It is incredibly consistent and fast due to the summoning and searching capacities of Nebradisk, Crystal Bones, and Crystal Skull. Do people not play this deck because they have completely forgotten that it exists? Look, if you want to shock people at basically any tournament, regardless of the level, local, regionals, YCS, etc., and you want to have a good probability of winning pretty much any matchup, take a look at Chronomalies. Well, that is my current top 10 list for decks that I think are underrepresented, underrated in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Play environment. I have posted links to all of these decks that I have built in my deck building sessions, not all of them, but some of them, in the description, so if one of these decks in the list interests you and you want a head start on building your personal deck, check them out if you want. Feel free to comment on decks that you think are getting the short stick from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community in the comment section, and thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.